Okay guys, welcome back. It's Michael here, and I'm just going to talk to you today about this guy, the Fujifilm X-H1. Now this camera is coming up to its 1 year anniversary on the market, so it's been on the market since March 2018 and now it's March 2019. It's 1 year old, which is, I guess, quite a long time in the technology sector, especially with mirrorless cameras. What I've found is that with Fujifilm anyway, their technology has improved a fair bit in the last month or so. They've released the XT3, they've got the XT30. Those cameras are both sort of big steps ahead with autofocus, I believe. I haven't actually used them, but I would say that from looking at the reviews, that one of the major areas that they've sort of addressed with these Fujifilm cameras is the autofocus, which was much needed, as is I'm going to sort of talk about with the X-H1 and its use. Now, I bought the X-H1 about a month ago, and I did do a video about how cheap it is now. It's great value. I bought mine for, I think it was just over 1,100 US dollars in Australia, and that came with a grip, the original grip, which gives you boost mode, which is great. Boost mode is a mode which is everything a little bit better and faster, and it also gives you 30 minutes of 4K recording and 30 minutes of HD recording, which I don't think you get if you just use the body alone. This camera from Fujifilm is centered towards, well, it is sort of marketed and geared towards the video functionality of it, and it is a absolutely fantastic video making tool, if that's what you're sort of after. I'm not so much into the video side of things, but I would say that from my limited use doing video with it, it is very, very good at video, and it's quite customizable. It's got a lot of functions. I'm not going to go into them. I would never use them all. All I do is set, whether I want 4K or 1080p. Most of the time I just want 1080p. And I would use Eterna film mode, film simulation, which is really nice, it's a very pleasing sort of color grade to video. Okay, so let's get into it. So this camera was released coming up to a year ago. It's a 24 megapixel mirrorless camera. It has a 3.6 million dot viewfinder, which is very clear, very sharp, very large. It gives a great view of your image through the viewfinder here. In traditional sort of Fujifilm style, we have dials for the shutter speed, and we have dials for the ISO, and on your lens, of course, you can set aperture. So if you want to go manual, all you do is you turn what you're using, what you want to set in manual, you just turn it, and that's in manual mode straight away. If you want to set shutter speed, for instance, you take it off the A setting and you just turn it around and set your shutter speed. If you want to set the ISO, then you take it off A again, A for automatic naturally, and you just set it to what you want, from L to high, which is, I believe, 2500. So yeah, it's simple to use, it's logical, it's got a good layout. Traditional, people would say, with the layout, and if you've used film cameras back in the day, back in the early 80s, this is sort of the style and what you would expect from your film camera. Going on from that, let's talk about the body a bit, because this is Fujifilm's top of the range camera currently. So currently this camera is the top of the range. It is quite large. It's not huge. It's not, you know, sort of big like a DSLR, like a how could we call it, like a Nikon D850, say. It's not that big. It is large, but not quite that large. It's got the grip on the side, which I absolutely love, and I think that sets it apart to the X-T2, X-T3 and all the other X series cameras, in that you've got this full-sized hand grip which gives me a great secure hold on the camera, and I really appreciate that. For me, that is almost essential. Like, that was the big turn off with the X-T2. I would always have to put on one of those Arca Swiss place grips onto the body so that I could get my hand to hold the camera steadily. And with this, I don't need one of those Arca Swiss plates. I can hold the camera well in my hand, and I love the position of the shutter release in the, you know, that position there, sloping away, sort of much more ergonomic than trying to press a button on top of the top plate here. It also features an LCD display up the top, which will give you such things as the number of shots remaining, and your exposure compensation and battery status, which memory card you're shooting to, things like that. In all honesty, I don't think I've ever looked at that LCD screen. I find it totally unnecessary. Yeah, they could have left that out and I would have been fine with that, but I guess it's sort of a nice sort of extra, sort of, yeah. Some people may like it, some people probably don't care. I'd say a lot of people do not care, especially being a mirrorless camera. You look through the viewfinder, all your information is in there. So really, what's the point? Okay, it also features a very strong, it's meant to be, I believe it's, don't quote me, but I think it's around 25% stronger, the body, than any other Fujifilm camera. So it's got a stronger mount, obviously designed to handle heavier lenses hanging off it for long periods of time and taking more abuse in a professional sort of environment. It's also got just let that aeroplane go. With the grip attached, it's like a seamless sort of fit. There's no notches or edges. It's quite smooth. It sort of flows down and continues with the body, as you would expect, I'd say. The grip does feature a headphone jack and a DC port on the side here for charging. The grip is weather sealed, just like the body features extensive weather sealing. It's meant to be good down to, I don't know, freezing temperatures, and good up to, you know, hot temperatures, and very good weather sealing from the weather, like rain and dust and things like that, sand or grit or whatever you're going to be throwing at it in the professional arena, which is what this body is aimed at. It's got a tougher paint finish than all the other cameras in the Fujifilm line, so it should be more durable. It should last longer without getting chips, etc. on it, which is nice because it does look a bit ratty when you got all chips around the edges of your camera. I guess that's pretty hard to stop anyway. It features, one of the good things I like is that it features a autofocus on button on the back of the camera here, and it's not tiny, it's not really big. It's not as big as you'd find on a Canon or a Nikon, but it's big enough, and it's certainly much bigger than the X-T2, which is just too small and fiddly for my use anyway. It features a touch screen, so you can scroll through your pictures, you can pick autofocus points by touching the screen. The screen does pop out to the side like that, and then You can tilt down and up, but it doesn't flip right around so that you can see yourself for vlogging situations or for like selfie situations where you're wanting to do a video of yourself or take photos of yourself and hold the camera out, that sort of thing. Won't be able to do that with this. The X-H1 features in-body image stabilization, which is supposed to be, I believe, around 5.5 stops of stabilization with, I don't know which lens they are recording that with, but it does work. It does work well. It works very well when you're using it in conjunction with lenses that have both lens stabilization as well. So it would be like dual stabilization. You'd have lens and in-body stabilization, which is really good for video. That works really well, and of course it's a nice thing to have when you're using all of Fujifilm's great prime lenses, like this 56 APD lens, which is, well, I'll have to do a little report on that one day because it's quite special too. It also features a very quiet shutter. It's extremely quiet, probably the quietest shutter I have ever heard. I don't know how they made it so quiet, but it's very quiet, which might be a great thing if you're doing wedding photography or if you're doing event photography or taking pictures of things that you don't want to distract people with clicking sounds, etc. So very nice that they've included and engineered this really silent mechanical shutter. It's fantastic. The shutter release button is extremely soft to the touch. It doesn't take much pressure to, I think they call it feather touch. I believe that's in the literature somewhere. If not, I'll call it that. It is like a feather touch for me anyway. Maybe my hands are a bit big and bulky and maybe I'm a bit heavy-handed, I guess. I am used to sort of Canon or Nikon, which seem to have very similar release sort of pressure that you have to push down, you know, to focus and then to release. Whereas this, it's very easy to sort of shoot off frames when you didn't want to. When I'm just trying to focus, often I'm shooting off frames, which is a bit disconcerting sometimes for myself, but I guess some people may appreciate that for whatever reason they prefer that, yeah. The performance of the camera is exceptional. It's a very fast and responsive camera, as you'd expect for a professional grade sort of instrument. It focuses quickly and is reliable and dependable, and as you would expect from a professional grade camera. There's no sort of surprises here. So some of the things that I don't like about this camera, unfortunately, no camera is perfect and without fault. And of course the X-H1 does have some bugbears, which I found, which may not cause you concern, or you may have workarounds for them. The number one bugbear for me would be the fact that it doesn't focus quite as quickly as I would like. And the eye focus feature is pretty much redundant, unless the person is quite wholly in the frame, probably like that sort of thing, then it will grab their eye. But as soon as they move away, like to this sort of size, you can forget it, absolutely. You're not going to be getting eye focus with a head the size that my head is now in the frame. And I think that's a real shame, because Sony's sort of nailing this area, and obviously it's a good thing to have, actually, when you're doing portraiture and things. You know, when you see the eye getting in focus, even with this little camera that I'm filming with, it's grabbing eye focus most of the time. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing, the focusing, when it comes to grabbing people's eyes. It does grab their faces quite well. It's quite fast, and it's usually in focus. There's not many photos that you're going to miss if you're you know, using it with good technique. But I do have a little bit of a bugbear with the eye focus feature. that's all. Apart from that, the focusing is rather good. It's not probably on Sony's level by any standard, but it's definitely, how could I compare it? It's a big step up from, say, the earlier Fujifilm cameras, such as the X-T1 or the X-E2. If you'd used them, it's definitely a big step up from them. It's not really a step up from the X-T2. It's virtually exactly the same, the focusing speed, etc., which is kind of a shame when this is meant to be a step up in camera compared to the X-T2. But it does do image tracking, object tracking, sorry, very well. It'll track objects and focus on them, like a moving cars or a person on a bike, things like that, where you probably got a greater depth of field, I'd say, or it's not so critical. Like with a person, you really want to, you might be using a very shallow depth of field and you're really going to notice if you don't get the focus. But with a car or a motorbike or a vehicle or something, or a boat, and you're tracking it, or a person running down the field, you're sort of tracking that whole object, which sort of gives it a bit of grace when it comes to focus. So, and in those cases, it's exceptionally good at tracking. Really good. No complaints there. One of my other complaints would be the larger size of it. It's a little bit heavy, like with the grip and body here, a kilo, we're looking at around a kilo. That may turn some people off, that may make some people a little bit frustrated who are used to very light mirrorless cameras. It's probably heavier than most Sony cameras, full frame Sony cameras, which for me, it's not really an issue. I don't care. I would rather have something that's solid, more ergonomically, nicer to handle. That's far more important for me than super lightweight, small and tiny. For me, it's ideal, but I can imagine for a lot of people, they would say, oh my God, that's a really big camera, like a crop sensor, and they might be a little pissed that it's not smaller. Another one of the bugbears, of course, is that I mentioned before, doesn't have the flip around screen. That would be really nice if it had a screen that turned around. I know people have complained about that, but this is a professional level camera, and I don't think Fujifilm is expecting many people to be sort of vlogging or doing selfies with an X-H1. It's more aimed at, somebody shooting weddings or doing some sort of almost pro grade or even pro grade video work, where they simply wouldn't have the screen turned around usually, although somebody in an interview situation would or could want to have the screen flipped around. So that's something to consider, Fuji. One of the other bugbears that I have with this camera is the fact that when I'm editing my photos, it's just not so good when I do it in Lightroom, and even other applications I've found you get, I'm sure you would have heard, the wormy sort of artifacts when you're looking closely at the image, and I don't like that. That grain looks a bit weird, although if you sort of zoom the photo out and ignore it, it's not so bad. That's just one of my other bugbears. So in summary, I would say that this is an excellent value proposition for anybody who's looking for a real high quality and fantastic value at the moment. Professional grade mirrorless camera. What you're getting here is, a fully professional grade weather sealed heavy duty camera body with some lenses available for it, which are reasonably priced, which are super high quality, and it offers a lot of features. It offers, fantastic video quality, fantastic picture quality. The downside is that, yes, it is APS-C, and you can never change that. You're buying into a system that's totally APS-C, so there's no prospect of Fujifilm releasing a full frame variant in their mirrorless line without them releasing a whole new series of lenses, because these lenses are designed specifically for APS-C and there's no getting around that. They're just physically made to only cover light up the area of an APS-C sensor. So you won't be able to ever, even if Fuji does release a full frame system, I don't believe that you'll ever be able to use these lenses on a full frame system, which is probably why they never will release a full frame system. And I don't believe they necessarily need to. In saying that, there is a bit of a compromise with the APS-C system. You are not going to get quite there with the image quality, especially in low light situations, which is a bit disappointing. That's the main area of concern for the professional going into the APS-C system, I believe, is the fact that you're going to have a compromise on low light situations, which may be the deal breaker, especially for people doing events and weddings and those sorts of things where you can't control the light necessarily so easily. You're often going from dark to light, indoor, outdoor, you're all over the place. And having the flexibility with a full frame sensor just gives you a little bit more leeway to get the shot. But in saying that, I've shot weddings with Fujifilm APS-C cameras and it's perfectly doable. You got flashes, you should be using flashes if light's bad. And there are workarounds if you know how to use your gear, if you know about photography, if you know how to manipulate light, position people in right spots. It's a similar sort of thing. You just got to be a little bit more aware. There's going to be less leeway post, but if you prepare things and think things through a little bit more, you will definitely get away and you'll get fine shots with Fujifilm cameras in any situation. So that's it. Yeah, that's my little summary about the X-H1, my experience with it. This, of course, is my opinion. This is how I find the camera in use. Your experience may be different. Your experience may have a focus on different attributes from the camera. So please don't come in and attack me and make fun of me or something and say that I don't know what I'm talking about. This is my honest opinion on my experience using this camera. I do enjoy it. I would recommend it for anybody up to professional level, including professionals. So I would say definitely consider this camera if you are especially attached with the Fujifilm system. I think that the X-H2 must be coming very, very, very soon. If you want to wait for that and you want to pay a couple of $1,000s more for it, I'm sure it will have, fantastic eye autofocus, and it's going to be really, a fantastic beast. I'm sure it's probably going to be the camera that's just about perfect, but it's going to be very, very expensive, as this was when it was released. It took me a year or nearly a year to get this. As soon as I heard about this camera initially, like in March last year, I wanted this camera so bad. I knew that this camera would be a really good thing, simply because of the in-body stabilization. Knowing that Fujifilm has such fantastic lenses to go with a camera which has in-body stabilization, you just know that you're going to get, stellar results from this sort of camera system. So yeah, so as soon as I saw it at such a great price, I just had to have one. And yeah, even though I didn't really need it, I do have a XT2, which is probably equivalent in quality, but this camera is just simply fantastic, and I'm so glad that I got it. And of course I would rather use this camera any day of the week over the X-T2, simply because of the ergonomics. It is so much better. So that's just my little review. Again, I'm coming back to that. Thanks for watching. If you like this and you want to hear more things about Fujifilm and other cameras, please subscribe, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.